We are continuing on with our NHL offseason plan series, and today we're looking at the 12th ranked team from the NHL's regular season, the Edmonton Oilers. What moves do they need to make to be better for next year? We'll discuss that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. Now, if you're new to this series, we're doing a dedicated video for all 31 NHL teams, analyzing their offseason needs, where their cap space is, what moves they're expected to make to get ready for next season. We've started at 31. We're now up to number 12 here with the Oilers. So first up, we're going to recap their 1920 season, take a look at how things went. Then we're going to analyze their cap space, expiring contracts, and discuss what signings or trades we expect to see out of them as the offseason kicks into full gear here. So let's first kick things off with the 1920 NHL recap. As you can see here, the Edmonton Oilers finished with a record of 37, 25, and 9 for 83 points. They certainly bounced back quite much better than last year, muchly improved. Of course, new head coach Dave Tippett made some pretty solid improvements overall. The coaching style and the systems really were good for the Oilers. Like I said, they made a lot of great rebounds here. And of course, the Oilers went on to the 24-team playoff format with this year's NHL's updated format because of the shutdown, and they unfortunately lost the play-in series to the Chicago Blackhawks. It was a bit of a surprise, to be completely honest. I really expected them to win that series. Overall, I think they scored lots of goals, but their overall team defense and goaltending unfortunately really let them down, and those are definitely going to be their areas of focus for moving forward. But I mean, this team had a solid regular season. It was really disappointing to see how they finished up here in the play-in series. Now, looking at their team stats from the regular season, they scored 223 goals while giving up 215 for a +8 team rating. Overall, not bad. The goals against could certainly be cut down now. As I mentioned here, defense and goaltending could stand to improve. Their special teams, though, were phenomenal. They had the best power play in the NHL at 29.5%, which is a phenomenal rating. Their power play was like the best in the NHL. But when you can put McDavid and Draisaitl out there, it's no wonder they had so much success. On the PK side of things, they were the second best in the league. So again, really solid at 84.4, which is surprising how good the PK was. But yet overall team defense and goaltending wasn't better, because you need that kind of play, in the 5-on-5 as well as when you're shorthanded. So a little surprising stat there for the Edmonton Oilers, but their special teams were phenomenal last season. Now let's take a look at where things stand with their salary cap space and whose expiring contracts are coming up for renewal year, who are the RFAs and UFAs for the Oilers for the 2020 offseason. So right now the Oilers have a cap space of $11.25 million, and that gives them 15 players under contract for next season. So you're looking at probably somewhere around 7 or 8 players need to be signed for next season, or of course replaced. So that's not a ton of room. Obviously they have a lot of money, like other teams that have some high-end forwards like McDavid and Draisaitl tied up here. So they're going to have to be creative with how they make changes. But let's take a look at what contracts are expiring and who are the RFAs and UFAs for this team this year. Now, we don't have a whole lot on either side, which is probably for the best year for Edmonton. They don't have a lot of decisions to make, but when it comes to the RFAs, they have Andreas Athanasiou, who is reportedly being shopped quite heavily by Ken Holland. I think they're regretting making that acquisition from Detroit last year near the NHL trade deadline. Things didn't really work out for the speedy winger, and he's going to be owed a pretty hefty qualifying offer, and it looks as though the Oilers would rather not provide that to him. They'd like to get him moved on. So it is possible, if they can't find a trade for him, that he may not be qualified and become an unrestricted free agent. They also have Ethan Bear and Matt Benning. I have no doubt they'll get new contracts. Ethan Bear had a phenomenal breakthrough season. I likely would see him probably getting a shorter bridge deal to continue his development before they get him on a longer-term deal, but he was a nice surprise for the Oilers last year. He's worked hard over the last number of years in their minor league system and getting limited opportunities to really take advantage this year. He's a solid member of their top 4 blue line, and I only expect bigger and better things from him to come. Benning can be signed as well. I think he could certainly continue to play with the Oilers. I mean, the Oilers are rumored to be shaking up their blue line, but I don't think we'll see either of these guys be the ones going out the door. From the UFA side of things, they only have a few players as well. We have goaltender Mike Smith, as well as forwards Riley Sheahan and Tyler Ennis. When it comes to Mike Smith, I really don't see him coming back. His year this year with Edmonton was pretty inconsistent, didn't have great results. The playoffs were especially not good. Koskinen wasn't a whole lot better. I think both goalies could be better next year. I'd be very, very surprised if the Oilers come back with the same goaltending tandem. They were heavily rumored to be shopping for another goaltender to probably go into a platooning situation here with Koskinen. When it comes to the other forwards, I think there's a good chance Ennis gets re-signed. I think he could have a good fit on a third-line role with the Oilers. Obviously, he wouldn't be costing a whole lot of money, so I can see that happening. Sheahan possibly comes back, but by no means guarantee. I'm going to probably say that's 50-50. I think the Oilers are weighing out other options for that third or fourth line center roles for next season. Now let's take a look here. What are the burning questions for this team? What other moves are Ken Holland likely looking at here between signings, trades, etc. to make this team better for next year? Now let's jump back into goaltending here. We just talked about the expiring contract for Mike Smith. They're heavily rumored to be looking at a number of goaltenders, likely via trade, but they could dip into free agency as well. Obviously, a lot's going to be dependent here, but they're rumored to be looking at guys like Darcy Kemper in Arizona, even Matt Murray in Pittsburgh. Koskinen's contract, though, is problematic. He's making over $4 million, and they need another goalie to be a 1A, 1B with him. That contract that Chiarelli gave him before he was let go, it's really not good. I was really confused why they signed him to that contract when they did. It just didn't make a lot of sense to me, and it's going to continue to be an issue for the next couple of years until it expires here. But the Oilers are heavily rumored to be in that kind of a mode right now, trying to find an upgrade. Now, of course, if they do make a trade, they do have some other trade pieces that could be moved along from, because they do have some good-looking prospects, but it's hard to say which ones would be expendable. I mean, I'm not sure. If you look at a team like Arizona, they're probably going to want draft picks and prospects in return. We might be talking about a first-round pick. We might be talking about some pretty solid prospects. I'm sure the Oilers are not going to want to give up guys like Evan Bouchard or Philip Broberg. So we'll see what happens here. But the Oilers are heavily rumored to be trying to make upgrades in goal, which makes total sense. Now, another big question is, do they sign Jesse Puljujarvi, who sat out last year as an RFA, contract dispute, didn't want to come back to the Oilers? Seems like he's changed his tune quite a bit. I've seen rumblings lately out of Edmonton media indicating that they feel the odds are, again, really high, and it could be something that we might even hear announced relatively soon. I mean, if you think about it, Jesse Puljujarvi could be another way for them to get a decent player in their lineup, play, and probably start off on the third line would be my guess. I don't think you put him on McDavid's side to start the season. I think he has to earn that, and obviously he wouldn't cost too much money where he's a year removed from being in the league, coming out of an ELC, is not going to cost a ton of money. Same thing with Tyler Ennis. If they sign him, I think those could be your third line wingers. At least it's a possibility. So we'll see. But I think we're hearing reports that it's more and more likely that Puljujarvi does indeed return, and we'll see if he can make a better go of it this time around. Now, as I mentioned when we talked about Riley Sheahan's contract, the Oilers are examining other options for their number 3 center. Doesn't mean for sure that Sheahan comes back. Of course, they have Nugent Hopkins who could play that role, but ideally he plays the wing in the top 2 lines. He's fit in well up there, and he's kind of an expensive third-line center to start with, so you can get him more minutes and provide more production from him playing in a different role. But one player that, I don't have any rumors to say they're looking at, but I think they should look at would be a guy like Mikko Koivu. If Koivu wants to continue playing in the NHL, we know he's not re-signing in Minnesota, that they're moving on. The guy brings a lot of leadership. He's great on face-offs, good defensively. You don't have to play him a ton. Obviously in Minnesota, he was probably playing a bigger role for the last few years than he probably should have been. You can utilize him more in defensive situations. Really, if you think about it, you could get him signed on a fairly cheap deal, and then you have, say, Puljujarvi and Ennis. I came across that idea through the Edmonton Journal report I've seen a few days ago, or maybe last week. And it's a great idea. That would be a great third line for Edmonton, and it wouldn't cost them a lot of money. So I think they need to examine a veteran guy like Koivu or something that's equivalent to that to be the number 3 center next year. You kind of take the pressure off, especially in the defensive zone, off of guys like McDavid and Draisaitl. You can kind of cut their minutes a little bit if you have the right player to put them in those right situations. Obviously, their PK was good last year, so you want to kind of build upon that. You don't want to change things too much, but obviously that number 3 center role to me is just really important for Edmonton. You have to wonder about buyouts as well. Now, the day I'm recording this video is the day that the buyout season and session opens up. It's going to run between now and October 8th, and I would think there's probably about 2 players I would say are potential buyouts. The most likely being defenseman Chris Russell, who's done a 1 year on his deal. It's a contract that I don't think the Oilers were overly fond of the past couple of years, but they kind of had to ride through it. It's at a point now where it wouldn't be too costly to do a buyout on, so I can see that being a possibility. The other one would be James Neal. Even though he did have a decent year last year, get up to a good start, still scored 19 goals. I think he could be a useful player for them, but it boils down to dollars and cents and their cap situation and what other moves they want to make. And I don't know if that's really a likely possibility, but I know it's something that they at least have to look at and consider, because they need all the flexibility they can get, and that would be a way to do it. I'm not sure that they're going to be able to find a trade for him. They would probably explore that first, but ideally James Neal, if you don't want to pay him that kind of money to be a fourth liner, ideally, and I'm not sure that he's going to be a top two winger for them moving forward here. I mean, he started off that way, got hurt. Yamamoto kind of took over, playing a lot with Draisaitl. So it kind of boils down to who's going to play with McDavid as well. So I think there's a decent chance Neal returns next year, but I do think there's a possibility we could see a buyout on that contract. Now, just jumping back as well to the defensive blue line shakeup that we're talking about, there has been rumor that at least one or two blue liners from the Oilers could be traded, and we could see some different looking defense next year. And those players most likely would be Klefbom and Adam Larsson. Now, like as I mentioned as well, Russell could be a buyout candidate, so it leaves you with guys like Darnell Nurse, Ethan Bear, and Caleb Jones returning, probably Matt Benning as well. So you got 4 returning D there. You bring in a couple of other defensemen either via trade or free agency. Obviously, that's a lot of cap money too. They might be able to find ways to move those contracts and find defensemen on better valued contracts, or that they could replace through free agency to replace those roles. Although they do need to be careful though, especially they're important defensemen. So they can't just replace them with just anybody. And obviously they're going to want to create some space for the youngsters like Broberg and Bouchard. Maybe at least one of them gets in the lineup next year as well. So they're going to want to have some flexibility there from the cap as well as spots for them. So it wouldn't be surprising to see a blue line shakeup. Who could replace those guys if they do make trades? It's difficult to say, because I don't know if they're going to want Bouchard and Broberg both in their lineup next year. Having 2 rookie defensemen playing a lot of minutes probably isn't the best idea, especially where Bear and Jones are not super experienced yet either. So we'll see what happens, but the Oilers are certainly rumored to be shaking things up on that back end as a combination here of changing things up as well as saving some money and trying to overall be better defensively. So let me know what moves you expect Ken Holland and the Oilers to make this offseason down in the comments, and we'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future content. And give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.